President Trump continues to prioritize loyalty to him over experience when it comes to America's national security. On Thursday, the director of the National Security Agency, General Timothy Hawk, and Deputy Director Wendy Noble were both dismissed. No immediate reason was given, but it's part of a purge of officials at the National Security Council. The president also dismissed several other officials after a meeting with far-right activist Laura Loomer. Both Hawk and Noble, they are career officials, decades of experience in national security. General Hawk has spent more than 30 years in the Air Force, primarily in intelligence and cyber positions. Wendy Noble joined the NSA in 1987 and has worked her way up through the agency. Joining me now, Mark Polymeropoulos, MSNBC national security and intelligence analyst. All right, Mark, this is very alarming on its face. Talk me through what would have been in General Hawk's purview. What was it that he was responsible for?
So General Hawk was dual-hatted, is kind of the word we say. He was the head of the National Security Agency, which is the incredibly powerful intelligence entity of the United States government that's responsible for intercepting our adversaries' communications. But he also was the head of Cyber Command, which is responsible for both defensive and offensive measures to protect the United States against our adversaries, such as Iran, China, and Russia. And this is an extraordinary move. You have a far-right activist who's almost acting like the national security advisor, marching into the Oval Office, trying to get the national security advisor, Mike Waltz, fired, ending up getting several of his deputies fired, and then General Hawk as well. I mean, this is something that really has sent a chill through the national security establishment. It's a terrible message for the intelligence community and for DOD officials. Look, there's huge issues going on now with the economy, and I understand that. But this is a major story, which I think has profound effects for American national security.
I think it is telling that you have pushback from Republicans in Congress, including Nebraska Congressman Don Bacon. He wrote on X just today, General Tim Hawk is an outstanding leader and was doing a superb job at Cyber Command and National Security Agency. He was fired with no public explanation. This action sets back our cyber and signals intelligence operations. At a time, as you said, unprecedented cyber threats, if you are an American adversary, if you are more specifically Russia, how are you then trying to maximize and exploit this change in leadership?
Well, right, Alicia, because, in fact, General Hawk was responsible for a lot of the U.S. countermeasures against Russia. In fact, pushing back against Russian interference in U.S. elections. And so the Russians are probably, passing out long bottles of vodka at Russian intelligence headquarters now because they know that there's dysfunction in the U.S. national security establishment. NSA has now been neutered a bit. Other people, capable people, will take over, but it certainly casts a pall over the U.S. intelligence community. And look, there's a time where we have issues with Russia, Ukraine. The U.S. is at war right now with the Houthis in Yemen. And we have a U.S. military buildup for a possible conflict with Iran. And so you have this dysfunctional national security team. This is really less than ideal.
Well, and it's the national security team. It's an entire culture of fear, reportedly, inside of DOD, where people are concerned, people who are in the officer ranks, that if they have any behavior that is read as not a proper show of loyalty to Donald Trump, that they could be the next on the chopping block. And just from an expertise perspective, I mean, these are not easy people to replace, right? General Hawk is not an easy person to replace. How do you even begin that process? And then what holes are left between this culture of fear and this absence of expertise?
I think that's a really good question. I mean, first of all, certainly with General Hawk, who was incredibly well respected in the cyber community, someone who, he will be replaced, but it will be difficult. But also at the National Security Council level, too, you have senior directors now who are gone. And so, what you need in the national security world is people who are not yes men and women, who will push back if there's an illegal order or if there's something that we shouldn't be doing. But right now, it seems the only trait that is required is loyalty. And Alicia, let me say one other thing. Mike Waltz should have offered his resignation based on this. His staff was being fired. Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, same thing, to see the head of Cyber Command being fired like this. Yet neither of them did so because, again, what they're valuing more than anything else, what Trump is valuing, is loyalty over competence. And I think ultimately Americans are certainly less safe because of this.
As demonstrated by Signal Gate. There's also, and I didn't want to start here because at the end of the day, all of these are Donald Trump's decisions. But I think part of what we are questioning here is the judgment of it all. Let's talk about where Laura Loomer comes into this story. The New York Times reporting today that a U.S. official briefed on the matter said Loomer, a far-right activist, outside advisor to President Trump, called for General Hawk's removal during her Oval Office meeting on Thursday. Trump ordered Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to fire General Hawk, the official said. Loomer claimed credit for the firing on X. She claimed that General Hawk and Wendy Noble were, quote, disloyal to the president on Thursday. The president was asked by reporters about Loomer's influence, and you need to hear it from him himself. Take a listen.
So Laura Loomer is a very good patriot. She is a very strong person. And I saw her yesterday for a little while.
What did she recommend?
She recommended certain people for jobs.
Adding to the administration, not
Adding.
Who did she
not
recommend?
firing?
Well, she'll recommend that too. But yesterday she recommended some people for jobs.
Did she have anything to do with the NSC aides who were ousted?
No.
Okay, so they're contradicting one another. He confirmed that he does take advice from someone who is a 9/11 conspiracy theorist who calls herself a proud Islamophobe. Just the fact that she has his ear, and then he is executing based on the advice that she is given. What does that mean for America's national security?
It's frightening. You had a 9/11 truther. First of all, how did she gain access to the Oval Office? She gets in there and then she gives recommendations, and President Trump takes them. And again, there's not enough people with authority around President Trump to say, first of all, don't let her in. But number two is you can't listen to her. Again, you can't have this 9/11 truther, this right-wing loon, dictating U.S. decision making in terms of personnel. And the other part, too, is, what was perhaps alarming is who are they going to replace some of these officials with?
Yes.